How's it going, everybody? Bryan Alvarez here on Wrestling Observer Live. We are here every day, Monday through Friday, noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, Sunday, 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern. It is Tuesday here on this program. We got a lot to talk about here today. Last night, the 30th anniversary of Raw, and a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff coming out of that show. We're going to talk about that here today. Royal Rumble is on Saturday. Steve Austin was pitched a match against Brock Lesnar for WrestleMania this year, which I don't think is going to happen, but you know, they say plans change. And in one of the best examples of plans changing, Tony Khan announced just a couple of hours ago that Mark Briscoe will be wrestling on AEW Dynamite tomorrow. And WBD has changed their stance. Mark Briscoe is allowed to wrestle for AEW on TBS and TNT. And they're allowed to do a tribute to Jay Briscoe on AEW Dynamite tomorrow. So we can talk more about this after the break, as well as all of the rest of the news. Mandy Rose and the Bellas, SmackDown ratings, the Rampage ratings from Friday night, Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens, and a lot of people talking about that as well. So plenty to get into. If you'd like to contact us here today, many ways to do so. You can text us, 425-780-7566. That is 425-780-7566. You can email me, Brian at WrestlingObserver.com, at Bryan Alvarez on Twitter. Mike is at Sempervive. He's going to be joining us after the break as well. So a lot to get into today. And, of course, don't forget, NXT tonight. Back in a moment, Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. And yesterday we were doing Wrestling Observer Radio, and we were doing the mailbag. And, we had a mailbag question yesterday. And should I just find it? I mean, I guess I could. I'll find the question here. I mean, you can see the clip on the internet if you would like to go up there and watch it.
What was this in reference to as you search for it?
I'll find it right here.
Okay.
It doesn't matter because we got like 50 of the same question.
Okay. I'm just trying to fill some
If
data
in
here.
time,
Yes.
Mark Briscoe wants to wrestle, do you think he will be allowed on TBS and TNT? That's essentially the question because, of course, the Briscoes were not allowed because of a couple of tweets that Jay had tweeted out a decade ago. And we've talked all about that. The Observer has a big story about all the lengths he went to make amends, but, they were never allowed. The Briscoes were never allowed on TBS and TNT, even though, as noted, Mark never tweeted anything. He had never done anything except be the brother of Jay. So I asked this question because so many people had asked, and I it's like I didn't even expect an answer. Because Jay Briscoe passed away last Tuesday, and it's been a week, and the main concern has been that Jay Briscoe has passed away. How are his daughters doing? How is his family doing? GoFundMe's. Like, I didn't think that there would actually be an answer at this point, like people had been asking. Will Mark, to WBD, will Mark be able to wrestle on TBS and TNT? But Dave had an answer. And the answer was no. And I listen, I've been doing a lot of shows. I've been doing this for a long time. I don't want to say I've seen it all, but I've seen a lot and I've heard a lot. And that was one of those rare times on this show where I was just like, I couldn't even believe my ears. And anyway, I was like, so like all night and then all this morning, like, man, I was fixing to go off because it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And then 2 hours ago, Tony Khan tweeted that tomorrow on Dynamite, it will be Mark Briscoe versus Jay Lethal in a match to honor Jay on what would have been his 39th birthday. Mark's on the show tomorrow. And then, it was kind of like, well, is that just tomorrow? Like, the story I heard was that Mark wanted to do this match to honor his brother. He talked to Tony, and Tony went back to WBD. So as of this morning, I was very happy that the match was happening, but my question was, like, is this a one-time thing? Are they gonna stick to this thing? And Dave tweeted a couple of hours ago, which presumably is, from AEW, that in fact WBD has changed their position. Mark is free to work Dynamite and Rampage going forward. And in addition to that, they are allowed tomorrow to do a tribute to Jay Briscoe. So, couldn't be better news. In terms of, Mark's career and everything like that. I don't know why it apparently took people getting really mad. Whatever. But anyway, that's the news. I'm exceedingly happy that it's happening. And that show tomorrow is going to be a very, very emotional show for a lot of people. And I'm very happy it's happening.
Absolutely. I'm ecstatic, and I'm glad that Tony Khan fought for it. I'm glad whatever had to happen, happened. And as you mentioned, Mark Briscoe did nothing wrong. He's only guilty of standing by his brother. And in the front page article that's up on the site, There's a mention that there was, I guess, some concern over another issue that's got to do with Jay Briscoe that ended up being cleared up now as well, too. So, I don't know what the future is for Mark Briscoe, and it doesn't really matter right now what it is because of everything that's taken place with his family. And, this is going to be a really nice moment, hopefully. And, that's pretty much all I can say. I'm just glad that this thing's finally over. I don't think anybody should really now speculate too much on what Mark's future is. Let him get this out of the way. There hasn't even been a funeral or anything like that set up yet. So, there's going to be a long time probably before he ends up coming back after this. So, as far as, yanking on WBD or anything like that, again, with Power Slap, with Mike Tyson being on there, with plenty of cases with WBD, I'm glad they, unfortunately it took this to do it, but I'm glad that it's now out of the way, hopefully for good. And we get a proper tribute to a guy that influenced a whole lot of people across many, many promotions.
I'm going to move on to the next topic here. Steve Austin had been pitched a match against Brock Lesnar for this year's WrestleMania. On Tuesday morning's Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer said the match pitched to Steve Austin was a match against Lesnar. Fightful reported a match with Roman Reigns had been pitched to Austin for this year's WrestleMania in Los Angeles. Dave said the match that was pitched was not Roman Reigns, it was Brock Lesnar. It's not on something that it can happen now. It's been talked about probably for months. So, there's a lot here. Steve Austin almost didn't do that match last year, as I think everybody is well aware, the match that he ended up having with Kevin Owens. And he would not commit to them advertising the match. That's why, until the very last minute, they actually promoted like he was going to be on the KO show or something like that. And, he didn't know whether he wanted to do it or not. And the day of the show, he made his decision, which is, let's do it. And he went down there and he did that match. And, man, he did a great job. He was awesome in that match. And Kevin Owens, can't say enough good things about Kevin Owens. And when it was over, I think Austin thought, man, I could do this again. And obviously he's not going to do it unless it's the right match, et cetera, et cetera. And, what's funny about Brock is, there was that incident with Randy Orton where he sliced him, concussed him, and et cetera, et cetera. But that wasn't like an accident. That was a plan. They wanted to get juice. And, it's way less barbaric to, slice someone with the point of your elbow and concuss them and everything than it is to, take a razor blade and go like this. But anyway, Austin, Brock does not have a reputation of hurting people and being dangerous. But, man, you look at him and it's like, I don't know if that's the match I'd want to come back for if I were 50 whatever years old. I don't know why, Austin decided that he didn't want to do it. He could change his mind. But, if you watch the show last night, it appears the WrestleMania match is probably going to be Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley. But that was the match that was pitched. And at least at this point, it looks like it's not happening. But, Austin didn't decide he was going to do WrestleMania until the day of WrestleMania last year. So you can't rule out anything. But
wouldn't the match be more likely to be Reigns in Austin in some sort of sleight of hand thing or something else besides that? Because I thought the scuttlebutt was that Brock Lesnar and Gunther would be facing off.
Well, there have been a lot of ideas, but and I guess they could do Lesnar and Lashley at Elimination Chamber and Lesnar and Gunther at
or even at Rumble,
at WrestleMania.
Right?
Well, Rumble's Saturday, so we're pretty much out of time for that one. But back in a moment, we got more to talk about. Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also WrestlingObserver.com. We're going to talk about Raw 30 here in a little while. But I gotta bring something up because people keep talking about it. And that is Sammy and Cody and the Royal Rumble and who's facing Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. Is Cody going to get the Batista treatment, et cetera, et cetera? Listen, I don't know. Maybe it's going to happen, okay? But there's a couple of things here. Number one, everybody making comparisons to Batista, all right? Batista was an outsider who walked in and was going to get a championship match at WrestleMania over a guy that people had wanted to be in this position forever, okay? Yeah, Cody has been out a long time, but Cody is not an outsider walking in and taking a spot from Sami Zayn. Cody also, and I don't know what people are going to think about it, but I mean, to me, Cody's got a lot of cred because of what happened to his pec. I mean, that dude tore his pec, and he went in and he did that match, and people could barely watch it, and he gutted his way through it, and he went to surgery, and they've done a great job showing you how passionate this guy is about pro wrestling. And, Batista, he loves wrestling too. But, one of the things was, fans are, he left. Then he came back. And so you had those fans that thought he don't love wrestling. He left. He left for Hollywood, the usual deal. Cody doesn't have that. It's obvious that Cody loves wrestling. He loves this with all of his heart. So he's got that going for him. Now, the other thing is I watched that Bloodline segment last night, which was great. It was great. And Sammy was great. Roman was great. Heyman was great. Jay was great. Jey Uso. And, I've said for a long time, what needs to be done here for fans to not turn on Cody or whoever is you really got to make these fans want to see Kevin and Sammy beat the Usos for those tag team titles. You've got to make them really want that, okay? If they don't want that, they're going to want to see Sammy going after Roman. So when I watched the segment last night, it became abundantly clear to me that that what needs to happen is Jay needs to screw Sami Zayn. It needs to be Jay. The Heat, whatever they do to kick Sammy out of the bloodline, the heat cannot be on Roman Reigns. The heat needs to be on Jey Uso, the guy that saved him last night and stopped Solo Sikoa from thumbing him in the whole 9 yards. The heat needs to be on the Usos, particularly Jey. If the heat's on Roman, people are going to want to see Sammy beat Roman. So, I don't know how they're going to get where they need to get. But, I mean, to me, it's obvious what needs to be done here. And they're not stupid, contrary to popular belief. So, I don't know how they're going to get there. But that, to me, is the key to this whole thing. We'll see what they do.
I agree with that 100%. And it could even be the main event on night one of WrestleMania. You can have a bunch of other gimmicked up Hollywood singles matches. If you're going to put a Paul match on, that would be the time. You could do all of that stuff, but if you're only going to do one match with Roman Reigns, say against Cody Rhodes on the second night of WrestleMania, the kingdom could start to crumble on night one with Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens getting that title, and you can do Sami Zayn against Roman Reigns because you do have the date in Montreal, and you can build to that TV with the fact that, guess what? The Usos can't get into the country. So they could do something so heinous to Sami Zayn, get themselves suspended. That's the reason they're not there. You do a match where Sikoa makes the interference, whatever it is, but whatever happens at the end of that Montreal show, right before WrestleMania, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn are standing strong at their in their strongest possible arena, in Montreal to be there, to then go on and face the Usos and be the ones to topple them at WrestleMania. To me, all of that makes way, way too much sense. But that's just me.
I don't want to steal his idea, so I want to give him a plug. before I steal part of his idea. Okay. So John Muse sent an email to Dave and I, and he had an idea. And my idea is different from his idea, but my idea is, it starts with what his idea was, okay? Okay. So listen.
Yes.
And once again, the first portion of this was part of John Muse's booking, okay?
Okay, let us know what the division line is where his ends and yours begins.
Okay. Well, it starts off, he makes a point that I'd forgotten about, okay? And that is, do you remember when it was reported that WWE had interest in Hikuleo? Right?
Yes, absolutely.
And you look at New Japan, and it's like, well, there's a lot of talented guys here. Nothing against Hikuleo, but like, Hikuleo? And then there was word that they had interest in Tama Tonga. Well, he has a booking scenario here, and mine's a little different from his. And here's mine. So, what if, you ready for some fantasy booking here?
Sure.
Okay. So last night, they did the deal where if you're down with Sami Uso, put your ones in the air. Jay puts his one in the air. Jimmy puts his one in the air. Solo Sikoa does not. And of course, Roman Reigns is angry, okay? Jay saves Sammy from this whole deal, and they hug, and then Sammy replaces Jimmy, and him and Jay successfully defend the tag team titles, okay? So right now, they're all 100% on the same page. Solo and Roman are not on the same page. What if you built to a split, and Sami Zayn, Jay, and Jimmy split off as baby faces from Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa and maybe perhaps Hikuleo. And you have Roman, who still has a bloodline, but Jimmy and Jay have split off with Sammy, okay? Granted, you would really need more time to make this really work, but you then build not to Sami Zayn. Cody can go and win the Rumble or whatever. But because of this split, Sami Zayn wants Roman Reigns in Montreal at Elimination Chamber for the championship. And so that's when you do your title match. Sami is getting his shot against Roman in Montreal. And man, Sami is just about to win that title. And it was a big bloodline plan all along. And Jay screws him out of the championship. Jay Uso screws him. And if Jimmy can get there, Jimmy does as well. But Jay for sure would be the one to do the thing, because Jay can get into Canada. And they all destroy Sami Zayn, this whole united, bigger than ever bloodline. And they're beating that dude down in Montreal. And who runs out to make the save for Sammy but Kevin Owens? And of course, they beat him down as well. And then Sammy's gotten his title match. Now the people want to see Sammy and Kevin destroy the Usos for betraying Sammy in the biggest match of his career. That's the match that goes on to Mania. And then Roman, meanwhile, is taking on Cody or whoever wins the Royal Rumble or whatever. What about that?
I followed along with most of it, but you got to rewind a little bit and just so I'm clear, where do the Tongans come in on this?
Well, just because you've got three guys, and Roman and Solo Sikoa are just one guy.
Like during the Rumble or something.
You had a
like
new
that?
guy, whatever. Somebody comes in, and it's part of this whole thing. But clearly, my and John's point as well is, isn't it interesting that they were looking for Tama Tonga and Hikuleo? when they've got this Bloodline feud, and perhaps there's a reason that they wanted to bring those guys in, and then you can, figure this out for a seeming split that actually ends up not being a split after all.
Sure, but you could also do all that after the fact. I mean, look, I said when I was talking about it that you could do that match in Montreal to build towards the tag match, and you get Sammy a title match against Roman Reigns and you get that out of the way as well. But then you can also do something after the fact, and then have all of those guys come in. Good, especially if they, if Haku / Meng becomes a Hall of Fame, participant, we're going to know maybe something a little bit more is up. But if they end up taking all of those guys and they happen to come in, look, you can just extend the Bloodline out after the fact. Roman Reigns can take some time off. It gives Solo Sikoa a chance to breathe and continue to grow while some other guys are around there too. Tama Tonga, for anything anybody wants to say about him, I mean, he is a well-polished guy, and he's kind of hit his ceiling in New Japan. I'd like to see him actually in WWE. It would be fresh, actually, and it may be actually pretty interesting. So to see them actually come in, I would actually be all for all that.
I just like my idea and John's idea as well, because Usos going with Sammy, you get your Sammy match, you get the Usos screwing him and costing him the match, and you put the heat on the Usos so they don't turn on poor Cody or whoever at WrestleMania. Back in a moment, Raw 30 and more, Observer Live. Back in the show, Bryan Alvarez here, Wrestling Observer Live. Mike Sempervive, also of WrestlingObserver.com. Well, let's talk about this Raw 30 show. So, in fact, it did open up with Hulk Hogan coming out and just saying hi with a mic that didn't work. Kind of like a normal Sempervive appearance, quite frankly.
Shut up, you jerk.
You're in good, I was going to say, you're in good company, but you had to be mean about it.
What are you talking about, you dork?
Then we had the trial.
Go have problems with Dave on the Observer
Brother,
Live
you
show.
didn't even have your mic plugged in yesterday.
So what?
So
what?
What?
Things happen.
So you're mad at me? You didn't even have your own mic plugged in.
I'm upset with you for the fact you bring it up
God.
as a cheap shot on the air, you little bastard.
Hey, that's not allowed. I'm sorry, Dom. I'm sorry you have to do all that massive editing for the Mightier 1090.
Little prick.
That's 2! You can't say that. Anything else?
I'll get suspended right now. I don't care.
We had the tribal court of Sami Zayn. I'm gonna put you. I'm gonna have a trial for you, Semp, and you better hope. Actually, you should be happy. I'll have Paul Heyman be the prosecution because he was horrible. His argument against Sami Zayn was the worst. Like he's mad at Sami. He doesn't like him. And so he's got 4 clips that supposedly prove that Sami is in cahoots with Kevin Owens. Not one single one of them was any good whatsoever. And then it concludes with, he tried to cut a promo on Kevin, and he accidentally bumped into Roman, which Paul Heyman claims is attempted murder.
Well, do you remember the adultery that Hulk Hogan performed when he lifted Elizabeth up onto his shoulder and his hand happened to be in relation to her gluteus
he grabbed
maximus?
her buttocks.
He didn't grab it.
Hey, listen, him grabbing her buttocks was far better evidence of an affair than anything that Paul Heyman presented here on this thing.
'Tis true.
So
He's
then,
the son of a lawyer, not a lawyer himself.
Roman's gonna kick out Sami. He's gonna, and not just kick him out. He's gonna get thumbed. But who should make the save but Jey Uso?
Something so dirty about all of
Jey
that.
apparently knew this was gonna happen, so he put
Asiatic spike.
He put together his own video, and it's one after another of Sami taking a bullet for the bloodline.
He had more than Paul did.
Well, they were all better.
Exhibit
No, I think it
X or
was. I'm pretty
something.
sure it was 4 and 4. But regardless, he stands up for Sami, and then Roman finally declares that Sami is not guilty for now. But he needs to finish out the night, then he needs to go home, and he does not want to see him until the Royal Rumble. And when that show comes, it'll be his final test.
Well,
it's a great segment.
It was.
Fabulous segment.
It went on for a long time, though, because here's the thing. By the time the show started, I don't know when this thing ended, but they didn't actually begin talking till 12 minutes into the show to actually begin this thing. So it was it'll be interesting to see how they did, because, again, no football, and I'm not sure what their competition was last night.
Then we had the Usos versus Damian Priest and Dominic Mysterio. Jimmy goes for a dive, pretends like he's injured his leg. The ref actually holds up the dreaded X. And then, of course, Pierce comes out and goes, you guys got to vacate the titles. Like, if he can't go, you got to vacate. Like, what? And then Sami agrees, I will take his place. And Adam Pearce is fine with that.
Well, that's part of his storyline now. That's the way that Adam Pearce governs, is the fact, look at Judgment Day. Look, the match is over unless he wants to get in. So that's just what Pearce does. That's his MO.
Well, this guy just went into business for himself. But then Sami ends up helping hit the 1D. They win the match. They retain the titles. Crowd super into Sami Zayn. In the back, Reigns still ain't happy. And he says, Paul, you did the right thing tonight. But I don't want to see this guy till Saturday.
Paul's face during that entire segment, especially when Sami was talking as Paul was looking at Roman. Oh, extra slimy Paul last night.
We had a bunch of segments backstage where dudes are playing poker, just a bunch of gags. All these people that were there and had nothing to do. They were just playing poker.
That was catering.
Then LA Knight comes to the ring, and he wants Bray Wyatt. But instead, The Undertaker's music hits. First, his dong hits. Then the Kid Rock theme plays, and then The Undertaker comes out on his bike, his motorized bicycle, and he gets in the ring, and they're having a stare down, and, LA Knight leaves after noting, Undertaker, when you did that Joe Rogan podcast, you're right, this locker room is soft. It's like, wow. What a thing to tell the crowd that The Undertaker said on Joe Rogan. Well. So he goes to the back. Out comes Bray Wyatt. LA Knight's scared. So he runs to the ring. He almost gets chokeslammed, but Undertaker shoves him into Bray. Bray lays him out. Man, if you weren't excited for this match before, whew, now we've got a match between Bray and a guy who's a geek in a match they're not even telling you the stipulation for. All right, whatever. And then Undertaker whispered something into Bray Wyatt's ear.
Kid Rock's my theme music, man.
So then we were supposed to have Becky and Bayley in a cage match. And the Bellas, they were flown. I don't know where they were flown to, but they were flown out that way for this show.
From Barmageddon.
And then they were like, we ain't going to this show. They went to a play. And then they went on their Instagram Live and just buried WWE for their treatment of the women. And they went on and on. And then today, everyone's up in arms because...
We're going to a higher thespian honor, and then we're going to play you out for the rest of the night.
It was supposed to be Becky and Bayley in a cage match, okay? It's supposed to be Becky and Bayley in a cage match. And they'd been advertised. And listen, I ain't down for false advertising and everything like that. They didn't do the match. The match got cut because the opening segment and everything went way too long. And it's easier to cut time here than to try to have this go long and then try and cut time later, whatever. And people are real mad about it, okay? And listen, if you really wanted to see the match, I'm not going to tell you shouldn't be mad. And I'm not a big fan of false advertising, okay? But you know what?
Brian? Things happen?
Well, this is what was going to happen. Becky was going to face Bayley in a cage match. She was going to beat Bayley, and then Damage Control was going to lay her out again, okay? Instead, what they did is they came out, they beat up Becky before the match began, they laid her out, they beat her up, the match never took place, okay? I'm not even justifying it, okay? But what I'm saying is, what they ended up doing, at the end of the day, at least we didn't beat Bayley. Their original plan was, we're going to beat Bayley in a cage match, then the heels are going to beat up Becky again to probably lead to Becky and Bayley again after Bayley had been... You know what? That booking sucks.
Yeah.
So at least here, we took out the part about beating Bayley, and now you can do the cage match again next week on Raw or whenever. Give them all their time that they want, and then, do whatever you're going to do afterwards. But I don't know. Was it that big a deal? It's not like they got that whole segment cut. It's not like they sat in catering. They went out there and they shot the angle, but they didn't beat Bayley. Which to me is better than beating Bayley and then doing the same angle to set up another match with Bayley. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. It should not be a big outrageous deal because we have the answer as to why it happened. It was not a false advertising bait and switch sort of deal. Yes, it was false advertising, but it's because the segment ran long and they didn't want to shortchange the cage match. But I also agree with you in the fact that, yeah, you actually serve your purpose much better this way with the way that it worked itself out. So you don't beat Bayley. It's not a big deal at the end of the day. Again, whoever timed the show out, all that sort of stuff. Okay, yeah, we can bag on them, if we can, isolate who that person was. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal.
And again, for all of you talking about short, yeah, you didn't get the cage match, but you're going to get it. You're probably going to get it Monday. And they're probably going to get 20 minutes, and they're going to do a full cage match. It's not like it's just disappearing into the ether. We're never going to see him wrestle again. We are.
Man, if these people are some of the same people that are upset over the Stardom match being shortchanged, quote unquote, on the New Japan Wrestle Kingdom show on January 4th, well, you've got a real issue with the clock this year.
We had a long DX segment. Long. Which led to Seth Rollins and the Street Profits.
This could have been cut short.
Versus Gunther, Ludwig Kaiser, and Giovanni Vinci with Kurt Angle as the referee. And Rollins ended up pinning Vinci with the curb stomp. And it was a good match. What do you expect? And all the legends put over Gunther. Nobody wanted to get near that guy. He's way too scary. We had a Charlotte Bianca segment where Ric Flair comes out, and where in God's name, was he at Tacoma Discount World? Where did he get this suit? And then he introduces Charlotte, and then Bianca comes out. They're interrupted by Sonya Deville. And yeah, it would have been much better if they didn't do a match here, if she would have just came out and got beat up. But instead, they actually did Bianca versus Sonya for an 8-minute match where Bianca beat her like it was nothing after 8 minutes. And somehow they're supposed to make me want to see Sonya and Charlotte for the title? No, I do not want to see that match. I do not care.
You know, you can get that suit by just traveling to your local dispensary, and once you save up enough UPC codes, you can turn them back in for a chance at that thing.
Then we had the Miz, and, Miz came out, wants a moment, so Kevin Owens gives him a stunner, and then he promotes the match at the Royal Rumble. He did not vow, he did not promise to win the title. He promised to do his best, which he will. Because, babyface ain't supposed to promise or swear to God or anything like that if they ain't going to win. So he very cleverly did not promise to win. We got a 30-man men's Royal Rumble, a 30-woman women's Royal Rumble, of which we have 7 women right now. We have Roman Reigns, Kevin Owens for the title, Bianca versus Alexa for the title, and Bray versus LA Knight.
Pitch black.
Yeah, whatever that is. And then the main event, Austin Theory beat Lashley in a no DQ match when Brock Lesnar came down, and he hit an F5 on Lashley, and then he hit an F5 on Theory onto Lashley, and Lashley got pinned. So Austin Theory retains the title, and that was the end of the show. First hour of the show was awesome, and then the show went like this, and there were a ton of commercials in the second and third hour. So I expect the first hour of Raw to do well over 2 million viewers, and I think the last hour is going to do probably around 1.6 million or something like that, a gigantic, gigantic plunge.
Might even do lower than that. I really do. I think the average will probably be okay because of that first hour and all the star power that they have, even rolling into the second hour. But that was a long show to get through, and I don't think the main event was going to be enough to hold anybody. They didn't advertise Brock, so him popping back out, maybe you get something for an overrun if it happened to go over, with maybe that news getting out there. But they seemed like they were rushing to go off the air, and they looked like they were almost out of time, so I doubt that happened.
Why am I the bad guy here with this Bailey thing?
What?
Why am I the bad guy?
Well,
Why is this a double standard? Every situation is different. And in this situation, it's like it is the lesser of two evils. Why would you beat Bailey just to set up doing the match again? It's not the end of the world. It's one thing. Back in a moment, Observer Live. Try not to lose my mind here.
Uh-oh. Come on, we've reached the end. Don't
You
let
know,
him
you know
do
the
this
other
to
one
ya.
that drives me crazy, if AEW would have done this, you would have gone nuts. How do you know? How do you know that? Every situation is different. And you know what's funny?
What's that?
If AEW would have, in fact, done this exact same thing, and I would have had the exact same reaction I had to this one, do you know what people would have said? They would have said, well, if this would happen on Raw, you'd have had a totally different reaction. Actually, I didn't. That's why people are surprised. They're surprised at my reaction because they expect me to have a different reaction. But there is no one, it can only be done this way. That's not how it is. Based on the circumstances and the dumb idea they had, I actually think that what happened was less dumb than what they planned on doing. Yeah, obviously, it sucks that they got the time cut. It sucked that they advertised the match and didn't deliver. But my point is, they had an idea that was dumber than what they did. In this circumstance, on this show, on this day. Not on Dynamite, not in Stardom, not involving other people, not involving this or that. On this day, on this show, with these people at this time. Now I lost my voice again. I worked so hard to get it back. Damn it.
You have a show coming up right after this, don't you?
Thankfully, it's Lance. He can just talk about his career for an hour.
He's done a great job with that. Those are some awesome stories, man.
Well, he's going to be back in an hour.
All right.
Why don't you do that show?
I can do that show.
I'm going to go have a lozenge. Is that what it's called? Get out of here, everybody.
Lozenge.
I'll talk to you next time. Observer Live.